Over here we have some of the African leopard tortoises. Virtually all these are rescue animals, as with many of our creatures. They are doing well. They are breeding for us and producing little torts. Other than their size, they make quite a good pet. They're an interesting animal. They fare quite well in captivity. They eat way too much food, though, for a reptile. They're more labor intensive than most other reptiles are. They also have a tendency to just completely trash their cages. We're at another one of the tortoise pens here. We have African spur-thighed tortoises. Virtually every tortoise in here is a rescue case. We provide them with lots of groceries and opportunity to live and socialize and breed. They provide us with an opportunity to observe them and learn more about their behavior. They are actually pretty violent tortoises. They work each other over pretty heavily. There's a great deal of struggle for dominance. Tortoises are not the inclemently peaceful little guys that many people think they are. They are inherently relatively tough on each other and exhibit a lot of dominance behavior. They will butt each other, they will bite each other, and they're a lot faster than you think they are, as is evidenced by anyone who's ever had one get out and tried to look for it. This is a little broad-nosed caiman, one of our babies from Molly and Buster. We have two bloodlines, two good clean bloodlines of the broad-nosed caiman. They are an endangered species from southern South America. The broad-nosed caiman has the widest snout proportionately of any of the crocodilians on the planet, and that big heavy jaw structure is made primarily for crushing mussels and clams, mussels as in the shellfish. They also eat crayfish, and they'll take occasional rodent and small bird if they can get a hold of it, but they eat mostly invertebrates, especially at a younger age. It's also important that they get invertebrates as youngsters, because if they don't, they do not do well in captivity. Unfortunately, 6 of my very nicest babies were confiscated in a horrific raid up in Milwaukee. Once again, questions about my ownership of these animals, which is just absolutely ludicrous. Not only are these animals that we bred at the Conservancy here, but we have been the only institution breeding these animals anywhere in North America, at least purebred ones. There are several others out there that are actually mixed with Paraguay cavans. These are good, clean, genetically clear Caiman laterostris or broad-nosed caiman. Brilliant colors. We are lucky enough to have particularly good coloration in our animals, and even our adults maintain some of their juvenile coloration. Very, very pretty little guys. And once again, caimans have a propensity, especially when they're younger, to be just a little bit agitated. If you learn how to handle the animals and keep them from being afraid of you, all of that disappears. It's a wonderful little boy here. Let's take a walk in. These are some of those terribly inappropriate Rubbermaid containers that we heard about on the news when they destroyed my facility up north. There is not only nothing wrong with keeping these animals in these containers, but for some species it is the only way that you will keep them alive. All of our animals are well supplemented with vitamins and minerals specific to the animals, specific to the time of year, even specific to the sex of the animals. Nutritional medicine is in its infancy. We would like to think that we at least have a pretty good grasp on the needs of the crocodilians and other reptiles that we work with. Our fecundity, or the number of eggs produced by any given female, rather than going down year by year, actually goes up year by year. Almost all crocodile farms experience a loss in fecundity with their females as time goes on. I attribute this to nutritional problems as opposed to anything else, and certainly our successes seem to bear that out, where year by year our females tend to give us more eggs rather than fewer eggs, and better fertility in those eggs. In the room in front of you here, you will see everything from baby Cuban crocodiles to baby Mecastops cataphractus, the African slender-snouted crocs. We have a couple of dozen of them in here from various litters and various parentages. The only time you will see concrete blocks or pieces of concrete in any of our pens is if they have been coated. If you don't coat them, you will end up with severe problems, especially for the acid water-loving ones where they can't handle the lime that leaches out of these blocks if they haven't been coated. Over here we have Philippine crocodiles and a little Nile croc. Once again, these were animals that we had some of them up in Milwaukee, and they were taken and put into severely inappropriate conditions in unheated warehouses and so on, all for the alleged benefit of the animals, which is a very, very sad joke on, unfortunately, just the animals. They took beautiful, healthy creatures and put them in just terrible conditions. Over here we have a Chinese alligator who was at another facility where they had 6 Chinese alligators. Their veterinarian killed 5 of the 6 by trying to use a drug called ivermectin to deparasitize them. First of all, it wasn't necessary, and second of all, if you work with crocodilians, you know that ivermectin is never a drug of choice. Ivermectin causes very severe problems and immunocascades in these animals. There is absolutely no time when ivermectin is an appropriate drug for a crocodilian. Febendazole is relatively easy to use on them. Tramadol is an appropriate medicament for anything from platyhelminths to some of the roundworms and so on. Okay, we're walking into one of our animal rooms here, wherein we keep numerous snakes, lizards, and a few turtles. Also some invertebrates, some of the megalomorph spiders, the tarantulas as they would commonly be called. I have always had something of a penchant for the boa constrictor group, and have seen, I believe, every morph of the boa constrictor in the wild. I have conservatively looked at probably 300,000 boa constrictors in my time, looking for origins, genetic differences, and all sorts of other interesting stuff. The boas are remarkably beautiful animals. They tend to make very good pets for people. And that's something we haven't touched on, is the appropriateness of reptiles as pets. Reptiles make wonderful pets if they are the right reptile. This whole movement to get animals out of captivity is the antithesis of what should be done. We are at a time in our history where we need to be more attached to animals, more connected to animals than we've ever been. And instead, the powers that be are doing everything imaginable to stop that, all in the alleged interest of animal rights. Well, as I said before, shouldn't the ultimate right of any animal be the continued survival of its species? This is not going to happen with the people who are in charge of what's going on. The arrogance in the zoological world, the incredible problems with the animal rights groups, the ignorance that is just pervasive throughout our lawmakers, throughout the decision-making processes, it's astounding to me. And it becomes a good old boy situation where if they go after somebody, the next thing you know, it truly is a crusade. It's a witch hunt. No rhyme or reason behind it. We don't need that. We just go. It's got to stop at some point. If we don't, we're going to lose our natural world. We need to be more connected to that natural world. We need to bring animals to more people, not fewer people. We are a tactile and visual species, and to deny that is to lie about who and what we are. We need to be able to touch and be around these animals. There's no question about that. Coming over to me here is one of the subspecies of the boa constrictor. This is an Amarilli from Brazil, named after Frederico Amaral, a very famous Brazilian herpetologist. They're a very beautiful boa, very narrow saddles. And if you look at the tail, you don't have the bright red blotching that you normally see, but a lot of sort of dark ivory color. Just an absolutely beautiful creature. Very interesting thing about the boa constrictor group is they have a stripe that goes right through their eyeball. That's a great way to camouflage that head. Snakes are extremely delicate creatures, especially their heads. So they try to attract attention away from the head so they can protect it, and toward the tail, which is why the tail on many snakes is brighter in color, more easy to see. Come on, little girl, in you go. Another wonderful thing about reptiles as pets is that if you have a problem with allergies, either in yourself or your son or your daughter, you virtually cannot be allergic to a reptile. Reptiles are also animals that require, in many cases, not in all, but in many cases, less care or less intensive care. So if you have a young lady or a young man in the house and perhaps they have other responsibilities or other things they're involved in, well, for your average snake, meaning something like a rat snake or a king snake or even a boa constrictor, do a little cleaning once a week or twice a week with them and make sure that they have a dish of water here and there. And they do beautifully for you. Give them a meal every 10 days or so, and you've fulfilled what that animal needs as long as they have appropriate temperatures. Take them out while you're doing your homework. Let them sit with you. Let them get accustomed to you. They are perfectly wonderful creatures. Most things that people believe about crocodiles, snakes, and many other reptiles are just simply wrong. And that's an important fact. The little guy I'm bringing out here is another Brazilian boa, but this is a different subspecies. This one is from central Brazil. There are very few of these animals in captivity. Very pretty little guy with very bright orange tail. Sort of almost a red-orange. I'll let you go back home. There you go. People always associate the color green with reptiles. In point of fact, there are some green reptiles, but they are very much in the minority. There are very few green reptiles. Over here, though, is a chondropython. They are found in North Australia and New Guinea, as well as a few islands off of New Guinea and Indonesia. And we'll let our cameraman take a quick look at our chondropython, who's all looped up on our branch here. See if we can get him to wake up here and come around and say hello. He is sound asleep. One of the things that you'll notice is that eyes on a snake never close. It's because they have no eyelids. Many people make big mistakes with that when they are feeding snakes. And they'll say, oh, my pet snake bit me. Keep in mind how you feel when you first wake up in the morning, and we have eyelids. It takes us a good 5 minutes before we can focus properly. Well, with snakes, it takes much longer than that because they have no eyelids. So if you go walking up to your pet snake and you have a prey item in your hand, a frozen mouse or frozen rat or whatever it might be, the only way the snake can identify it is with its tongue, by smelling what is in your hand. So often these so-called bites are nothing but mistakes on the part of the snake because he can't actually see, or she. All it is looking for the food, and that's a food response. Then it is the fault of the keeper, not the snake. Over here we have Madagascar ground boas. Until the so-called raid up in Milwaukee, I had, I believe, every bloodline in the United States of the Madagascar ground boa. This was, by the way, one of the snakes misidentified several times by the alleged experts who were tearing my collection of animals apart and saving them from the terrible things I was doing to them. You can tell this guy's in terrible shape. We just beat our animals to death. Madagascar ground boa is in very serious trouble out in the wild. And the only way we are going to be able to bank them up in captivity is by getting appropriate bloodlines. They do not breed particularly well in captivity, and they only have 2 or 3 babies, unlike most boas who may have as many as 20 or 25 babies. A survival strategy for these guys, because of the areas that they're found in Madagascar, is to have only 2 or 3 very large babies, and that's it. So breeding these guys is a very slow process, and one that has to be done just right, or else you get nothing. And we were hoping to put together a whole new stud book. There was a gentleman at the San Antonio Zoo who was doing a stud book on these. He passed away, and virtually all of his paperwork and his animals disappeared. Once again, people make the argument that at zoos those things don't happen. Well, I hate to tell you, but they happen as often at zoos as they do in private collections. In here we have, I'll see if we can find somebody who's out here, the pseudoboa nigra, which is, there we go, which is the black pseudoboa from southern South America. Beautiful snake, found in Argentina. Primarily a rodent eater, and they will thrive in captivity if you get the parasites. They have quite a parasite load when they get brought in from the wild. You get those parasites out of them, they do quite well. We have bred them in captivity. The nice people at Maddock in Milwaukee killed my babies from this particular group, along with many, many other animals that they took and confiscated and put in inappropriate situations, claiming all the while to be saving the animals. This is what happens with ignorance and arrogance, a very, very sad combination. Here is a interesting little creature. It's called a mussurana. They are from northern South America primarily. They have a reputation for eating other snakes. They are glossy, pretty, very active snakes. I've worked with mussurana's almost my entire life. The mussurana is not venomous in a way that would ever harm a human being, although they have enlarged teeth in the rear of their mouth. It's called an opistoglyphic snake. The realities are that those enlarged teeth, although they have a semi-enlarged gland nearby, it does not seem to contain any type of venom that would be harmful to a human being. The very, very few times anyone's ever been bitten by a mussurana, there is absolutely no record of there being any swelling or problems from the bite. There are some rear-fanged snakes from Africa, like the Thelatornis, the twig snake, or the boomslang, the Sphalodus, where the venom is quite potent. And as a matter of fact, Carl Schmidt, very famous herpetologist, died of a boomslang bite. It's quite a little tongue he's got there. Quite a nice little red tongue. These caging racks are very typical of what people use to keep snakes in captivity. They are very appropriate. They're also very expensive. And these are the very same racks that the agents who broke into my place smashed apart and left in my backyard.